A surrogate mother gives birth to twins, only to be abandoned by the intended parents. The reason? Absolutely shocking. Danielle Owens never imagined she'd be lying in a hospital bed, cradling two babies she wasn't meant to keep. At 33, life had already thrown her more than a few curveballs. She'd left college before graduating, endured a painful divorce, and worked nights cleaning the city courthouse. But what truly defined her wasn't the setbacks, it was her compassion. So when she spotted a flyer at a health clinic about becoming a surrogate for a couple facing infertility, something clicked. It felt like more than just an opportunity. It felt like a calling. The couple, Eric and Melissa Langford, were well-off, kind, and white. Danielle was black, single, and modest. But in the beginning, none of that seemed to matter. The agency took care of the formalities. On their first video call, Melissa wept. Eric assured Danielle they'd stay connected through the pregnancy. They sent her gifts, arranged for a private nurse, and even paid for her to attend prenatal yoga. Melissa would often text, "Whatever helps you feel comfortable, we're beyond grateful." Danielle took them at their word. The journey wasn't easy emotionally, but physically everything progressed well. At 10 weeks, she learned she was carrying twins. Eric and Melissa were ecstatic. At 20 weeks, she sent them ultrasound pictures. In return, they mailed her a delicate silver necklace, adorned with two tiny footprints. Danielle hadn't planned to grow attached, but how could she not? She sang lullabies to them at night. He smiled whenever they kicked. "They're not yours," her sister warned gently. "Don't get too attached." But Danielle would just rest her hand on her belly and whisper, "I know." Then 2 weeks before her due date, the contractions started. In the middle of the night, she was rushed to the hospital, heart pounding, trembling as she dialed the emergency number the agency had given her for the Langfords. Voicemail. Again and again. Still, she told the nurses, "Their parents are coming. Please keep trying. They'll be here." She gave birth alone. No Melissa by her side. No Eric pacing nervously outside. Just the rhythmic hum of machines and Dr. Feldman's calm voice guiding her through the pain. At 4:18 a.m. the first twin, a boy, was born with a soft, steady cry. His brother arrived just 2 minutes later. Both were healthy. Both were beautiful. One was wrapped snugly in a white blanket, eyes wide and peaceful. The other was placed against Danielle's chest for a fleeting moment, before the nurses gently carried them away to the infant care unit. Danielle's body trembled from the rush of adrenaline. Her lips were cracked and dry, but she managed to whisper one question, "Are the parents here yet?" A nurse offered a gentle shake of the head. "No sign of them yet. We're still trying to reach them." Time slipped into a blur. Danielle drifted in and out of sleep, a dull pain radiating through her core. When she finally woke again, sunlight was filtering through the blinds. It was almost noon. She asked once more. Still no news. As evening fell, a quiet shift settled over the hospital floor. The nurses grew more reserved. Some didn't meet her eyes. That's when Dr. Feldman entered her room, closing the door behind him with a weight that said everything. "There's something we need to tell you," he began gently. Danielle sat up slowly, her skin pale. "The Langfords haven't responded," he continued. "We've called every number on file. The agencies tried too. Nothing." She blinked, her voice dry. "What are you saying?" Dr. Feldman paused. "They were supposed to be here for the delivery. We got in touch with their legal team, and they've declined all responsibility. They don't want to be contacted again." The words didn't compute. Danielle's jaw fell open, but nothing came out. "They what?" "I'm so sorry," the doctor said softly. "They said the outcome wasn't what they anticipated." Her throat felt scorched. "What does that even mean?" He sighed. "All we know is this. When they were notified the twins had arrived, they asked for photographs. After receiving them, they issued a formal message through their lawyer, declining custody." Danielle went still. It was as if a chill had crept beneath her skin and stayed there. She thought of the babies, the one who had a dimple when he cried, and the other who clenched his fist like he was ready to take on the world. "What happens now?" she asked in a whisper. "That's something we need to talk about," the doctor replied. Later that night, Danielle stood by the nursery window, gazing at the twins sleeping soundly beside each other. One was dressed in a lavender onesie printed with cartoon cars. The other lay tightly swaddled, his tiny hand resting gently on his brother's chest. They looked serene, perfect even. Two little souls who had no idea what had just unfolded. A nurse approached quietly. "They haven't even been given names," she murmured. "You're listed as the gestational carrier." Danielle didn't respond. The nurse hesitated. "Would you like to hold them?" Danielle paused. She knew she wasn't supposed to. Legally, she had signed away any maternal rights. He was just the surrogate. A vessel. But something inside her, something deep and unshakable, had already crossed that invisible line. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a breath. Moments later, the nurse returned, carefully placing both babies into her arms. Danielle lowered herself into a rocking chair. As the twins nestled close to her chest, silent tears traced down her cheeks. The couple Danielle had trusted, the ones who promised so much, had vanished without a trace. And now the system had no answers. These two little boys, so full of life, so warm in her arms, had become no one's responsibility. The next morning, a social worker arrived. She spoke with a calm, professional tone, carefully outlining options: temporary guardianship, foster care, legal procedures. Danielle didn't interrupt. She simply rocked back and forth, holding the babies close. Eventually, she looked up, her voice barely audible. "So what happens to them now?" That night, Danielle barely slept. The hospital room was dark and silent, but her thoughts raced relentlessly. She sat in the rocking chair with the twins asleep against her chest, still unnamed, still in limbo. The thought of sending them into the foster system twisted her insides with dread. But the law was clear. Danielle had no legal claim. She had signed the papers. She was never meant to be anything more than a surrogate. And yet, they looked like her. It wasn't just their brown skin. It was something in the curve of their smiles, the arch of their tiny ears. One of them had a birthmark that matched her nephew's exactly. A detail too precise to dismiss. At 6 in the morning, Danielle asked a nurse for a mirror. She studied her reflection, then turned to examine the babies. The resemblance was undeniable. With trembling fingers, she picked up her phone and dialed the agency. No answer. She called again. Still nothing. She sent an email. Then another. The silence continued. The next day, unable to wait, she drove to the agency's office, pushing the twins in a borrowed stroller. The receptionist's eyes widened. "Danielle, we didn't expect you. No one from your team has replied to me," Danielle said, firm but composed. The woman shifted in her seat. "The Langfords terminated the agreement. That's all we were told." Danielle clenched her jaw. Her voice dropped. "Something's wrong. These babies," she pointed to the stroller. "They look like me. I think you used the wrong donor." The receptionist froze. Danielle stepped closer. "You mixed up the vials, didn't you? I want a DNA test. Now." She called a lawyer, someone who agreed to represent her pro bono. Within 3 days, the hospital collected DNA samples. Danielle gave hers. The babies were taken as well. The Langfords refused to provide theirs. 10 days later, the results arrived. Danielle sat at her kitchen table, the papers trembling in her hands. She read them twice. She was 99.98% biologically related to both boys. The sperm donor was listed as anonymous. The clinic had made a catastrophic error. Danielle lowered the documents to the table and broke down in tears. She hadn't just carried these children, she had given birth to her own sons. The agency tried to dodge accountability. The Langfords denied any further responsibility. But in court, the truth prevailed. Danielle was awarded full legal custody of her biological sons. The court clerk offered warm congratulations. Even the judge, known for his stern demeanor, gave a rare smile. In the back of the courtroom, one of the nurses wiped away tears. Danielle named them Malachi and Micah. Life was far from easy. Just 2 months later, she was back on the job, working night shifts and pushing the twins in a second-hand stroller, bundled in thick blankets against the chill. While Danielle mopped floors and scrubbed staircases, a kind coworker kept watch over the babies in the break room. It was exhausting, but they were hers. That truth made every sacrifice feel worth it. She spoon-fed them oatmeal as the sun came up, rocked them gently while humming old gospel hymns. Every tiny moment, a giggle, a first crawl, the sparkle of a new tooth, felt like witnessing a small miracle. Sometimes people stared. They whispered behind her back, "Is she really raising them alone? 2 infants? Where's the father?" Danielle learned to block out the noise. The only voices she truly cared about were the ones that called her mama. Time passed. By the time Malachi was 5, his love for music was impossible to ignore. He tapped out rhythms on countertops, drummed on pots with spoons, always chasing melody. Micah was his opposite, quiet, thoughtful, often found gazing out the apartment window at the night sky, a book clutched in his hands. Danielle saved every penny. No vacations, no luxuries, just enough for diapers, rent, school supplies. She took on tutoring in the evenings, worked weekends, and eventually sold the engagement ring from her former marriage to buy a second-hand laptop. For Micah's growing obsession with science. She never mentioned the Langfords. Not at first. There would be a time for that. But not yet. When the boys turned 7, their school held a talent show. Danielle sat in the front row, palms sweating, heart racing. Micah stepped onto the stage alone, holding a piece of paper. His voice trembled at first as he began reading his poem, "The Bravest Person I Know." He took a deep breath, straightened up, and continued. "She gave birth to me, held me when no one else would. She fought for me before I even had a name." He paused for a heartbeat, then looked out into the audience. "My mama isn't just my mother. She is the beginning of everything good in my life." The auditorium fell silent, then erupted into a standing ovation. Some people cried openly. Danielle sat frozen in her seat, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then Malachi stepped out beside his brother, cradling a small keyboard in his lap. He began to play a lullaby, the very one Danielle used to hum softly during their hospital nights. Her hands rose to her face and she wept. After the talent show, a woman approached Danielle. She was neatly dressed, visibly uneasy. "You don't remember me?" she asked. Danielle tilted her head, unsure. "Should I?" "I used to work for the agency," the woman said, her voice catching. "I was there when the mistake happened. The Langfords, when they saw the twins were black, they panicked. Said it would ruin their family's image. They told us to cut all contact." She swallowed hard. "You deserved so much better." Danielle stared at her, speechless. "Why are you telling me this now?" The woman's eyes softened. "Because they tried to adopt again. I couldn't stay quiet. I quit that same week. And I never forgot what they did to you." Danielle took a breath and nodded slowly. "I never needed their apology," she said. "I got something better." She turned her gaze toward the field, where her sons ran laughing through the grass, their joy dancing in the golden light of dusk. 1 week later, a small community newspaper published a story titled, "Mother Raises Abandoned Twins Who Turned Out to Be Her Own. Her Love Changed Everything." It spread like wildfire. Media inquiries poured in. Interview requests, TV spots, book offers. Danielle turned them all down, except for one quiet radio interview where she simply said, "You don't need a perfect plan. You just have to choose love. Every single day." The final scene fades in years later. Malachi sits at a grand piano on a stage covered in flowers, fingers dancing across the keys. Micah stands behind